Hello, I'm Sam Harrison, and I review and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today we have a discussion, and that discussion is my top 10 books for 2023. I'm going to be going through them in a reverse order, starting with my number 10 book, going down to my number 1. And I will be telling you a little bit about each one, kind of 1 to 2 minutes. For many of them, there's reviews already on the channel that you can watch, and the links to those will be in the description. And there'll be timestamps, although the timestamps won't. I'll try not to spoil the rest of the video, and I'll just have in those timestamps book 1, book 2, etc., etc. So, without further ado, let's start with my number 10 for 2023, the 10th best book that I read this year, which was, looking at my list, Mr. Mercedes by Stephen King. This is the first book in the Bill Hodges trilogy, the first of his crime thrillers that kind of, in the first book, co-stars Holly Gibney in a small supporting role, but then as the series goes on and on and on, she becomes a much more important character, and eventually the protagonist of her own book, which is just titled Holly. Holly was Stephen King's 2023 release this year, and I read through all of the Bill Hodges books with the intention of catching up and reading Holly. I did do that, and I really loved that experience. Mr. Mercedes was probably the best book in the whole set. I mean, it's maybe a tie between that and Holly, or The Outsider was also very good. But Mr. Mercedes, I think, really grabbed me the most. I love the character of Bill. There were loads of really good surprises. Brady was a fantastic villain. So all in all, excellent book, highly recommended. And unlike any of the other Holly books or the other Bill Hodges books, you don't have to have read any of the preceding books to get the most out of them. So that's probably why Mr. Mercedes ends up on this list. It was a tough fight for 10th place. I decided not to have any honourable mentions, but that 10th place for Mr. Mercedes. Next up, we have Wistful Ascending by J.C.M. Byrne, first self-published book on this list. Wistful Ascending wasn't a surprise at all, because I was told that it was inspired by Invincible and Deep Space Nine, two of my favourite pieces of any kind of media outside of books, I guess. Invincible being the comic book by Robert Kirkman about the kind of young Superman-like character that's been made into an Amazon Prime show now. So if you I'd say read the comic, but the show is also really good. But let's not talk about what this has been inspired by. Let's talk about Wistful Ascending. Wistful Ascending stars Rohan, who is a super powerful superhuman. He can basically survive in space. He can, pull a spaceship with his bare hands. There's loads of really cool stuff about Rohan, and he lives on this kind of super intelligent AI-run ancient space station out on the fringes of the galaxy to kind of try and get away from his past and from some things that he hints at having done. I ended up, and now this is weird because I did give Mr. Mercedes a 5-star, and I ended up giving this one a 4-star and saying that there was, it was kind of missing the 5-star sparkle for me. But over time, I think about Wistful Ascending all the time. I've really enjoyed the universe, really enjoyed the characters, and I cannot wait to read the next one. I actually put the next book, physical, on my Christmas list, and I'm really hoping that I get a copy. And if I do, I will be reading that in January. Next up is, maybe I should have just held the tablet up so I could read off of it and not do this constantly. Next up is Defiant by Brandon Sanderson. So currently, the 3 books that are on this list are all part of my month-long projects. So I had the month-long project to read the Bill Hodges books. I had the month-long project to read self-pub indie books. And then this one was my final month-long project, which was to read the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. Now, all Skyward and Starsight were both very good. Defiant, I felt like was like Cosmere level quality. I thought Defiant was a real banger. Really enjoyed it. Don't want to say too much. It's kind of the conclusion. It's the full ending. The conclusion of the Skyward Saga. So to talk really too much about any of it would be to spoil the previous books. All I'll say is that the ending was fantastic. It was emotional. It was a proper Sanderlanche, like you would expect from something like Stormlight Archive or Mistborn. And while these books are targeted at a younger audience, I absolutely devoured them, and I'm almost 40, and I really loved them, and I would recommend them to anyone who loves science fiction. Next up, we have at number 7, Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. Now, I talked about a little bit about this in my Books Before BookTube video, which I filmed this morning, but I loved Shadow of the Gods and I loved Hunger of the Gods, but there was just a little too slow opening to Shadow of the Gods for me. I wanted a little bit more pace in that kind of first third of the book. And so when you get to Hunger of the Gods, which is all go, the whole book, and it also adds these 2 new perspectives, POVs, from antagonists, or you might even say villains, that was a really great kind of expansion of the world. The magic system becomes more clear and more interesting, and also you get to see way more kind of god stuff. I really loved Hunger of the Gods. Cannot wait for the 3rd volume. I really hope that John Gwynne's doing okay, because I know he did have a tragic loss in the family, which is why the 3rd book has not yet come out. But I'm happy to wait for you, John. Absolutely loved those first 2 books. And of course, I do have 7 books in The Faith of the Fallen to go back to when I have the time. Now, book 6 is the final book in this list from Brandon Sanderson. Now, I chose not to have multiple books from the same series, because otherwise a couple of these late on series in the top of the 10 would really have dominated all 10. But I do allow multiple books from the same author, and I read like 9 Sanderson books this year, and the best one that I read of those books was Tress of the Emerald Sea. Tress of the Emerald Sea is excellent because it doesn't read like Brandon Sanderson. So there's nothing wrong with Sanderson, nothing wrong with his prose, nothing wrong with any of that. I think that he is really fantastic. However, the thing that I felt about Tress of the Emerald Sea was that he gave it so much personality, so much flavour. He made it so fun to read, as well as like the actual act of reading the prose was fun. Hoyt's voice is hilarious. Multiple jokes genuinely really crack me up. And the jokes are not just in the narration, but also in the dialogue. There's some great funny lines. It introduces us to a load of all-timer Sanderson characters. I can't wait to see these people turn up again. I'm very sad that Tress of the Emerald Sea is set in the kind of far future of the Cosmere, because it means that it's going to be probably a long time before we see these characters again. Next up, another boat book, Ship of Magic by Robin Hobb. Now, I've read 3 and a bit Robin Hobb books this year. The second 2 books in the Farseer trilogy, the second and third book in the Farseer trilogy, Ship of Magic, and then I started Mad Ship, but I had kind of burnt myself out on Hobb. Ship of Magic has like everything I love in fantasy novels. So it has a really interesting setting, it has some fantastic world building, it has a huge but really strong cast of characters. So like, I'd say there's kind of 3 main characters that we follow in the book, and obviously Captain Kennet is one of the best, and I think he's probably the best character that Hobb has written for me so far. I love the pirate world, I love the live ships, I love there is still that kind of Robin Hobb obsession with like trauma to our leading characters, but I think it's done really well, and I don't think that it is over the top. I think that it's giving our characters this adversity to push through to really show us what they're made of, and I cannot wait for I can wait. I'm not going to be reading, going back to The Realm of the Elderlings, I don't think, until I have finished Wheel of Time, unless I decide I want to take a break from Wheel of Time and go and read another large fantasy series. And in that case, I think Realm of the Elderlings should be the one that I prioritise because I have already started it. Next up, book 4 on my list. So we're in the top 5 now. That was 5, so we've been in the top 5 for a book, but we're almost in the top 3. Top 3 to book 4 is Skin Game by Jim Butcher. Now, I talked about this in my Books Before BookTube video as well. Skin Game, I think, is my favourite Dresden Files book. It is book 15 in the series, so very similar to other books on this list, which are sequels. It's very hard for me to give you more than the very basic plot, because it will spoil other books in the series. So essentially, this book is a heist, and it's a heist on the devil in hell by Jim Butcher, by Harry Dresden, and some of his mortal enemies. It's a really good book. It's got proper Ocean's 11 vibes, and it's one of those books that if somebody was like, oh, sell me on the Dresden Files, I could be like, well, eventually you get to the point where Harry has to do an Ocean's 11 heist in hell against the devil with some of his worst enemies as his supporting crew. And I don't know, that would probably sell me. Hopefully it sold you if you haven't read the Dresden Files. It's definitely one to prioritise, and I really think that you, if you're watching this and you have even a slight curiosity about the Dresden Files, that you should give it a shot, mostly because the books are really short, they're really fast paced, they're really fun, there's lots of good jokes, there's lots of great storytelling, and there's some incredible character moments. So I would really recommend reading the Dresden Files and putting those as a priority on the TBR, and they could even be fantastic palate cleansers. So if you're doing something like me and you're reading a massive series like The Wheel of Time, or Wandering In, or Realm of the Elderlings, or Malazan, then cleanse that palate between books with a few Dresdens. Book 3, we are now in the top 3, so the top 3 actually was really, really easy for me to choose, and I basically had the top 3 nailed down before I'd even really worked out the rest of the list. And the book number 3 in the top 3 is Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. Now, Jade Legacy is the final book in the Greenbone saga. Again, can't give you too much story, although I think the thing that you need to know about Jade Legacy, the thing that will sell you on this book, is that it is the best book of the series. It is the longest book of the series, and I wish it was longer. It covers around 30 years worth of time in the lives of our Greenbone warriors, our Greenbone gangs, and I just desperately wanted Fonda Lee to have turned this book into like 10 books, and you honestly could. There's enough amazing characters, there's enough amazing moments, there's an incredible storyline. I absolutely love Jade Legacy, and I think that if you like urban fantasy, if you like just good stories in general, you will love it too. Book 2, number 2 on my top 10, and this is a really weird one because I just finished this book today. Is this recency bias? Maybe, but this one is Justice for Kings by Richard Swan. Now, The Justice of Kings is about a man called Conrad von Volt, who is a justice, and in the society that he lives, he's basically kind of detective and then judge and also executioner. So von Volt basically goes around the countryside to these small towns that don't have things like courthouses or developed police forces, and he investigates, tries, and sentences crimes. So most of the crimes are things like theft or assault, and he might, cut off a hand or whatever. But in some cases, he investigates blasphemy against the religion of the land that has been enforced by the emperor, and in some cases, he even investigates murders. And this book starts off with a smaller kind of incident, but then the majority of the book is about the murder of a lord's wife. And ladies are not, or lord's wives, ladies, are very, very, very rarely murdered, especially by other members of the nobility, which is the suspicion in this case. So Von Volt goes to this town, which is kind of this up-and-coming, newly affluent merchant town, and he investigates this murder. But the secret source for this book, and I think the kind of the real killer feature, is that the book is a first-person POV, and the framing device is that it is being told to you by Von Volt's assistant, his clerk and apprentice, Helena Sedanka, who is writing this from the far future, and the book is full of foreshadowing of these terrible events that happen in the book, but also outside of after, way beyond the future in the book. The foreshadowing is genuinely excellent. The writing is fantastic. There are moments where I was kind of having those where I was just absolutely in love with this book, and then there was moments where I was laughing out loud at some of the kind of the retorts. And there's a character in the book called Sir Radomir who is genuinely hilarious many times. He's on page later in the book. Bressinger, who is Von Volt's kind of right-hand man, is also brilliant. He's very funny, but also quite a tragic figure. He's so well drawn. Von Volt himself is kind of this mystery box of a man, where he's kind of he's cold, he's subdued, but he's also got this raging temper. He's got this desire to see justice done and the law followed. And the kind of the eventual villains of the book, which I won't reveal to you, are really, really interesting, and the way that they intertwine with Von Volt's story and the story of the murdered lady is really, really interesting. So I know that every time I talk about books, I say XYZ was really, really interesting, and it's a very overused phrase for me. But Justice of Kings is fantastic. It is a small-scale fantasy story, so we're not talking about continents at war here. We're talking about the murder of one woman in a kind of small to medium-sized town. It's not even a city. And there's a very small but very well-drawn cast of characters, and that focus that Richard Swan has on this one kind of minor but historically significant event allows him to really delve deep on the characters, really go strong on the world building and the plot, and I absolutely loved it. I know many people might say recency bias on this one because I literally just read it, but I didn't pick any of the books, any of the previous two books that I read for this top 10. So and the one before I read before Justice of Kings, which is the Dragons of Deepwood Fen, that was so close to being my number 10. So maybe it is recency bias, but look at the other reviews by other booktubers of the Justice of Kings, and I think you'll see that everyone else really, really loved it, and a lot of people put it in their top 10 for the year they read it. So I think that I'm justified. What's my number one? If you have watched my channel for more than a month or so, you will know this. If you watch my guest appearance on the Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews video, where he compiled 73 booktubers and asked us what our favourite book of the year was, you'll also know, and that is Of War and Ruin by Ryan Carhill. This is a book where I finished it and was sad that I could not give it 6 stars on Goodreads, because it was so much better than any other 5-star read I've read this year that I felt like it almost deserved its own category. The characters are incredible, the world building is incredible, the magic is incredible, the story, oh my god. There are moments that have been kind of hinted at since Of Darkness and Light that we finally get kind of brought together in Of War and Ruin, and we're only halfway through. So there's 2 more books left in The Bound and the Broken. This one is kind of serves as the mid-season finale, according to Ryan, and I absolutely believe him. It's an incredible book. It released in 2023 as well, so pretty cool for my number 1 book of the year to actually released in the year. Released in January, but still, you know, that's good enough. Pardon me. Yeah, this book was just everything that I wanted it to be. There's so many point of view characters, and you love every single one of them. There's never a moment where you kind of leave the, as it were, protagonist, Kaelin, and go to another character and go like, oh, I wish I was back with Kaelin. Every single character you move to, you're like, oh my god, I'm so glad. I really wanted to know what's going on with Ella. Really wanted to know what's going on with Darlin. And the story is being told across so many different fronts, across an entire continent. And you feel the movement of the characters, you feel the politics shifting, you feel the war changing around these characters. They introduce kind of some new threats, and they delve deeper into the local politics of places like Voltara. They introduce new allies in the rebellion against Fane and the Empire. It's everything. It's everything that you want. If you like books like the Stormlight Archive, then this is for you. And I would even say that the pacing is stronger and the characters are stronger in Of War and Ruin, which is blasphemous on BookTube, where Stormlight, or even on the internet, where the Stormlight Archive is basically the most beloved fantasy series of all time. But I have to say that I thought Of War and Ruin was way above and beyond Rhythm of War, which was a good book, but the worst book in that series of 4. And the Of War and Ruin is not just the best book I've read this year, but probably one of the best books I've ever read. And Of War and Ruin, when I finished that and I sat down and I thought to myself, well, that's it, that's probably my favourite fantasy series of all time now. So that's supplanting series like, you know, Sanderson's Cosmere, supplanting the Dresden Files, supplanting Stephen King's Dark Tower. So all of these books are absolutely incredible, but Of War and Ruin, and by virtue of kind of being a part of that series, The Bound and the Broken, especially, as well as the novellas and The Darkness and Light was incredible. It's just everything. It's not the best, definitely the best book I read this year, and it's not close. Justice for Kings is really good, and my review that I've already recorded for this, and you'll have seen it by now. My review is a 5-star review, and it's a glowing review. I have 0 issues with Justice of Kings, but Of War and Ruin I have no issues with, and it is above and beyond anything else I've read this year. If you aren't reading The Bound and the Broken, now is the time. Get reading it. So, after that kind of, not a rant, what's the positive version of a rant? A gushing gush? A gushing gush, the disgusting. After that gush, we should probably end the video. I think that I'm planning this one to go out on Christmas Day, so if that does happen, then Merry Christmas. I hope you've had a great day, and if you're watching it after Christmas, Happy New Year. If you're watching it in, I don't know, like June 2027, then hope you're having a great summer. And please make sure that you like this video if you liked it. Have a chat with me in the comments down below. Talk to me about your favourite 10 books. Tell me if you would reorder my series in my favourites into a different top 10 order. And please do subscribe to this channel for more content. There's so much coming up. We've got one ring in every single Thursday. Mondays and Wednesdays I do new reviews for books that I've been reading. Tuesdays are usually kind of a feature video where I'll talk about something that isn't specifically related to one book. So it might be a series in review, it might be a TBR video, it might be a tag video. So Tuesdays are kind of that off the books. Thursdays is always the wandering in every single Thursday, and Friday I do a weekly or monthly wrap up depending on where we are in the month. Please stay tuned for my January TBR, which will be coming soon. There's more Book of the Year content that is coming all week this week, although I am still going to do the Wandering In video on Thursday because I know people love those videos and I don't want you to go too long without. But thank you so much for watching. If you've made it this far, maybe put like a gold medal or something for Of War and Ruin in the comments, or a trophy as like one of those emojis, you know. And I will speak to you soon. Hope you've had a great Christmas or whatever holiday you're celebrating, and goodbye.